Hi, Eric Gibaud, ericgibaud.com, and today, thanks to photosfera.com, I'm going to present you the Fujifilm X-Pro3. Let's start. So here I am in Punta Hidalgo in Tenerife, Canary Islands. It is sunny. Well, it's always sunny, but not always, but there was no winter this year, so it's sunny today anyway. And here's a beast. Photosfera lent it to me with the 23mm f.2. I wanted to try a prime lens 23, which is equivalent in APS-C 35 in full frame. So I wanted to try with this one. This is silver because I only had a silver with him, but it also exists in, you only had silver at the shop, so it also exists in black, okay? And also I carry with me my Leica M4P. Why? Because when we speak about this camera, many people make a parallelism, or you said it, comparison with Leica M cameras. This is a Film M, and it has the lens here that I'm actually trying right now, which is the 7 Artisan 35mm f2. So when I review this lens, probably you'll see some pictures you've seen in this review of the Fujifilm X-Pro3, but I'm concentrating on this one. But I can tell you the way you handle it's really similar. So another thing, when you'll see I changed clothes during the recording. Not that you see me changing, just all of a sudden I will be dressed different because I record over several days, so I'm not going to get dressed every day with the same clothes anyway. Okay, let's carry on. What impresses me is it doesn't make any noise. Listen to that. It's incredible. I'll make another one. Incredible. This is really for stealth photography. It's really discreet. A concert. I don't think I'm on the mechanical shutter here. I'm not on using the electronic shutter, so it does make noise, but really little. So if you thought you were going to escape from the van, no, I'm here because outside it's very sunny, really hot, and some kind of wind, so it's easier to be here recording. So I'm going to tell you all the specs, all that, so it's easier to be here. But I invite you to check two reviews I made. One is the X-T3, which I think is important because everything that camera does, the X-T3 also does, but almost very similar. Well, I speak about the inside. I think the sensor is actually the same one, and most features are the same. And also the X-Pro2. So the X-Pro2, I really did not like it. Why? Because I think I was not ready for that kind of camera, and I think also because of the message Fujifilm was giving to the potential clients. And basically they were almost telling it was a rangefinder and almost a Leica, you know. So I'm exaggerating, all right, but I was not prepared. I think market was not prepared for that camera, and maybe this time the fact that there is no screen on the back, you'll see, I'll show you in a minute, makes us feel different when using it. And if you dive in this philosophy, then yeah, this one I prefer it to the X-Pro2. Maybe today I would be more gentle with the X-Pro2 than what I was when I made the review then. Look at the picture. Oh, no screen. Oh, that's what's really different about this camera compared to other cameras. It's really a different way of thinking. Actually, there is a screen. Actually, there are two screens. A small LCD screen here that tells you a film type. It says Provia right now, which are the film, analog film Fujifilm was making, and some are still making. So you can actually put some color profiles. So if you work in JPEG, you get them directly. If you work in RAW, obviously you get the RAW file without this. So that's interesting. And if you want the full EXIF, you can configure that you actually have all the data as all this. And if you want to look at the picture, then you have to you have to flip the screen down and have a look at it. It works really strange. Some people don't understand really if it's nice or not, or feel it's not practical. Honestly, when I use it, I don't miss the screen. Anyway, you can actually review the picture in the viewfinder. But I don't actually miss the screen. Actually, you feel you concentrate more on the picture and less on what you've just done. Well, I forgot to tell you that actually the screen is hidden. but it does work properly. When you play, you click on play, then you have the picture. Maybe with reflection you don't see much, but you can actually do zoom and use it's touchable, so it's a useful screen when actually use it. Well, I think this is enough information for the screen. Although I think this is the thing that really stands out. It's a very different screen. The size of the screen, the inner screen is 3-inch, and I would say that you can actually use it as a waist viewfinder like this. You put it down and look like this. So if you're doing some street photography and want to be discreet, maybe it's useful. And if you want to look from the top, then it's not useful. But I think most people do street photography actually don't put the camera up. Well, it depends on what you're actually doing. But to me, it's not really of a problem. So I think this is the main difference. We'll see about the viewfinder after. But I mean, the screen is really what stands out. The inside of the camera, I would say the functionality, the features, all this are really, really similar or equal to the X-T3. So I'll leave you a link to my X-T3 review so you can have a look at it. And the image quality is very similar, so this is why I didn't make that many pictures with this camera, because the quality is the same. The image quality is the same. Good. I say good. Well, you like it, you don't like it, but it's the same. The other important difference is that the viewfinder, if you look at it, it looks like my Leica, and you actually have here 3 viewfinders. One is an optical viewfinder. When I look in there, I actually see through a glass, so it's optical, and it works exactly the same as my Leica. You actually have a frame that indicates what part of what you see is in the picture, so it helps you to frame. You can actually see if there's something outside the frame. You can actually reframe a bit. If it was just like this, you would not know what's outside. Here you do see it. And the same as in my Leica, you have a small lever here that shows you the different frames. So how would it frame if I had different lens on it? I've got the same thing here, but it's even better. If I keep pressed, sorry, the other way, if I keep pressed like this, it comes out all the frames available. So it says here, it says 23, 27, 35, 50, 56, 60 and 90. So before I want to change lenses or buy a new lens, but if I've got several lenses, I want prime lenses, I want to decide which one would be better to frame that picture. I can actually preview before changing lenses, so this is great. Problem with optical viewfinder is that actually, as it's with this kind of optical sided viewfinder, is if I look here, I don't see the same as the lens is actually seeing. So if it's far away, it's no problem, but if I'm really close, I think I'm pointing here and actually pointing here, so there is a parallax error. So that will be a problem if you want to do macro photography or close-up. Where you point is not actually where the picture is being made. So what you see in your viewfinder is not actually what your camera is seeing. So there is a good option for that, is to go with a second kind of viewfinder, which is a digital viewfinder. And you just press here, and what you see here now is no longer the optical. On the optical, another problem is you would see the lens in there, same as happened here. Actually, I've got a vented shade here, so I can actually see through, but I do see the lens on the side. And same thing here, I see the lens on the side here. Sorry, I'm here, okay. So here actually I see the lens here on the side of my picture. Does it bother me? Well, it depends on the size of the lens, if you are used to it or whatever. So this is the other problem. When you go to digital viewfinder, then you don't see that anymore because it goes through the lens. So actually, if you do macro photography, close-up, the digital viewfinder is ideal. And another third viewfinder is actually dual. If I press here, sorry, I found an optical, I press this way, I've got a small screen here that appears on the side. This is a very small digital screen, and it's ideal to do close-up and to do precise focusing. So you actually have 3 in 1. When I tested the XproO2, I didn't like it because I think it was too early to use that, or I was not prepared, or I tried to use it as a general purpose camera and it is not. It's really thought for specific things. But I think the fact that they've removed the screen on the back really dives you into the situation of pure analog photography, although it's digital. So then this viewfinder makes a lot of sense, and now I really like it a lot more than I like the X-Pro2, because I think that sounds stupid, because you don't have to look at the screen, but the fact that it's hidden makes it like you use it as an analog tool. It's really different. So this kind of viewfinder now makes a lot more sense than before. Another thing that could be disappointing for you is that if you want to use M lenses like Leica or is it called Zeiss or Wallander, and you have an M mount, there is an adapter for that. The problem is, if you want to do focus peaking, you actually need the digital viewfinder. So maybe if you wanted to use your Leica M mount or this with optical viewfinder, well, that would be disappointing for you. What I know completely, if the Fujifilm adapter for M mount lenses has focus confirmation, because in this case, yes, you could use the optical viewfinder and it will tell you if it's in focus or not. But I know this. I checked on website, but I didn't really see the answer. So if this is something you're interested in, you should check with the dealer and ask him if actually you will get a focus confirmation with the optical viewfinder if you use the Fujifilm M ring for adapting your M lenses. Well, the build is unique. It's incredible. It's wonderful. I love it. Honestly, you feel the camera, it's great. There are three kind of finish. This is the black one, which is the standard one, but there's also a titanium one and a silver one. They have a special treatment, so it doesn't scratch all this. It's more expensive, but it's a special series, I think, or special, I don't know if it's just temporarily or ever, but it looks good, but it's more expensive, and this is the one I have to try. Okay, placement of buttons is great. I won't get into all details, but it's really well placed, everything. One thing I like is this button. You actually, to change the ISO, you have to pull and change the ISO. And the compensation is well placed. All buttons are really well placed. I'm not getting into all details, but honestly, I can tell you, this is a camera, you use it, you like it, or you hate it, but this is really special, really a nice camera, okay? This is an APS-C sensor, a 26.1 megapixel. It's the same as the X-T3, I was told. It seems to be the same sensor. The image quality is really the same, so I do believe this is the same sensor. It has ultrasonic dust remover, which is good, because when you use that kind of camera on the street, if you change lenses, you want to make sure that if any dust get to the sensor, this is cleaned. You have dual memory card here, UHS-1, UHS-2, okay, which is good. Because if you want to have, you can actually configure it to have RAW on one side and JPEG on the other one and all this. So I'm not getting into details of all this, okay? They all work the same. ISO. This is funny because it starts from 160 ISO and goes up to 12,800 ISO native. I know some people, I say it's a bit funny, not for me, but for many, 160, what a strange number. Well, it used to be very often to have a film at 160 ISO. For example, the Portra 160, by Kodak is 160, so I was not surprised. I thought, well, that's nice. My first Leica M8 digital Leica was also starting at 160, and you can actually force to more ISO. It can down to 80, 100, 125, and also push to 25,600 and 51,200. I show you some pictures I've made from 160 to 12,800. And I'm really surprised by the quality. There is not much noise at 12,800. I'm really surprised. I thought I was expecting more, and this is quite clean. It's not perfect, but it's really acceptable. So I think Fuji is there. They're really fighting hard on ISO. Speed, it goes from 30 seconds up to 1/8,000th of a second. On the mechanical shutter plus bulb mode up to 60 minutes, and then you have the electronic shutter that goes from 15 minutes up to 32,000th of a second. I know many people ask why don't they use just electronic shutter, and do they still use a mechanical shutter? Does it make sense? Yes, it does, because actually mechanical electronic shutters, not this camera, but any camera, they have a rolling shutter problem. It makes that when there is some element on your picture that is moving, it actually loses the shape. It's actually like a bit bent or things like this. So normally you use electronic shutter only if you absolutely need it. And when you're indoors, sometimes it makes strange effect with some lights, depending on the frequency of light, if it's 60 Hertz or 50 Hertz, and the speed, if it's a multiple or not of this, it may give some problem also. So normally this is why they still use mechanical shutters, and I suppose electronic shutter will better, but right now this is what there is, and this is why it's still there. You can do burst rate, 11 frames per second. You get 42 raw, compressed raw with no loss. But if you want a non-uncompressed, I think it's down to 36 raw in a row. Okay. But don't spell it the same way. Probably don't pronounce it exactly the same way, but it comes out to me like this, okay, out of me like this. And if you want faster than 11 frames per second, you can go to the electronic shutter. It goes up to 30 frames per second. Bracketing, and they've worked well on bracketing. You know that you make one picture, it makes several configurations, and well, you press one, it makes several pictures with different configuration. You have exposure bracketing, obviously. You have film bracketing. You know that Fujifilm, I'll come later to that. They have several kind of film profile in there. The typical film they make, like Provia, Felvia, all this. You can actually pick 3 films. So you make a picture, it will show you 3 films like this. Three version with different film profile. You have dynamic range bracketing. You have ISO bracketing, white balance bracketing, and focus bracketing. So what is focus bracketing? In my Olympus, it's called focus stacking. Actually, when you do some pictures like macro and you want everything in focus, it's normally not possible because you're so close that the depth of field won't be possible to cover the whole object. So the only way to do it is make several pictures with different point of focus, different moving where you're focusing, and then you must stagger them later. Well, this camera is not like the Olympus. You have to indicate how many pictures you want. You just say where it starts and when it ends, and it will calculate by itself how many pictures that's to make sure it's everything in focus. And then it will deliver a file which is ready, and you can also, if you work in RAW, it also can deliver each file you've done in case you just wanted to stack it yourself in your computer. Okay, it does time-lapse, flash synchro, 250th of a second, which this is what I always want from every camera, so it has it. But this camera has no integrated flash, but this is really usual on top of the range camera. Normally they don't have integrated flashes, but many, like Olympus or even Fujifilm with other camera, like I think the X-T3, they give you a small flash unit. You can actually put it there. In this one, no, it comes with no flash in there, no flash in the box, nothing. If you want the flash, you have to buy it. Okay, it does video 4K and 4K cinema at 24, 25, 30 frame per second, 200 megabits compression, and you can record during 15 minutes in a row, 1.5. I know some people will say it's a bit short, but this camera is not really thought for video. It gives you many features, good features for video. It's not really thought for that because the way you use the screen, all this, but well, in case one day you want to do video, you can. And in Full HD it does 24, 25, 30, 50, 60, and it records during 59 minutes in a row. After you have to stop and start again, okay? And in Full HD you can also do 120 and 100 frames per second during 6 minutes for slow motion, really slow motion. So 6 minutes may sound short, but normally when you do slow motion, you're not recording during hours. You do normally small take, and that's it, you know. So I think it uses a lot of resources. So this is probably why it's limited to 6 minutes, okay? And the same with the 15 minutes on 4K, probably for resources. Also, maybe the sensor could heat up, so that could be the reason. But I think the video part is really good when you see that this camera is really thought for photography. Film simulation. They have 17 film. As you can see, when I press here, okay, I can change here, you can see here, I change directly the film profile I'm using. Okay, it tells me here. So this film profile are the one that Fujifilm actually makes for film, real film, analog photography, and they work in JPEG. It means that when you're actually using this, it will put the color profile in your JPEG, but not in the RAW file. It means the front of the RAW file, I mean the cover picture, you will see it, but when you open in Lightroom, then you lose it. So it means that if you like to use this profile and also want to have RAW file, I advise you do both RAW plus JPEG. This way you have the film profile in the JPEG and you have a RAW with nothing in there separately. If you don't want RAW file, you just want to use JPEG and always that kind of profile, then that's fine, just use JPEG and that's it. But it works really well. You can also add grain. I didn't say noise, I said grain, analog grain. You can have soft, middle and strong grain. So it does look like film photography, and you realize that actually Fujifilm, they've been thinking this camera for film photographer using digital camera. And this is really funny because you see all this and you think, well, then my picture is ready. When I've made the picture, it's ready. And yes, it is. So it gives you that possibility. It also has HDR. So I want to stress a point on the HDR word. Many people, when they hear HDR, they think about this crazy color pictures. Yeah, but this is not HDR, this is tone mapping. And many people use a software to do the tone mapping, and this software is called HDR or HDR capable. So they think this is HDR, and this is not HDR, this is tone mapping. Real HDR, you don't actually see anything. Yeah, if you're a good photographer or you're expert or you've some knowledge, you probably see, oh, I see this car in front of me and the road underneath, it should be really black and do see some details, and the sky is also properly exposed. This is not possible. Several pictures have been made for that. And you're right, this is on HDR. But if you don't know that, you don't really notice this is HDR because the shadows have been pulled up and the highlights have been controlled and it's properly exposed everywhere, and this is HDR. And this, the way they do it in this camera, there are many cameras doing HDR, but the way they do it is really similar to smartphone technology, and this is where you see that some smartphone technology is getting into our cameras, and this is good because I think this is really interesting. It's going to give many possibilities to many people. You also have filters like toy camera, like miniature or desaturation on some parts of picture. This is something I never use, but it's in there if you wanted to use it. Connectivity, you have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. You don't have HDMI. You have USB-C, and I know what your question is. I'm coming back right now to it. Microphone connector, yes there is. It's shared with the remote control, but it's not a 3.5 jack but a 2.5 jack, so you actually need an adapter by Fujifilm to actually use a standard 3.5 jack. I think it's a pity, and it's shared with the remote control, so it means if you want to use a remote control, you cannot actually use a microphone in the jack. For me, it's not a problem because if you want to remote control a camera, you're probably using your smartphone to do it, so it's not a problem. But I think it's more a bother that they didn't use a 3.5 jack instead. You know, I think it's a problem. So let's go back to the USB-C. Your question is, can I charge a camera via USB-C while using it? Yes. Can you put a power pack connected to it? Yes. Did you like the charger, Eric? No, I didn't see the charger. No, there's no charger. What do you mean there's no charger? Well, they give you a small cable that goes from USB to USB-C, but there's no charger. You have to connect to your phone, telephone charger, smartphone charger, and charge a camera. Because if you want a charger, you have to pay for it. It's optional. You have to buy a separate USB charger, or buy an optional charger. You actually remove the battery and place it in the charger to charge, but in the box doesn't come. So I think this is really shameful because for that kind of price, that level of camera, this is really greedy not to put a charger. Even if you don't want to put the charger place separate batteries, at least put that 10 euros charger, you plug in the camera and that's it, you know. I think I think it's shameful, honestly, you know. And now I'll speak about the battery. This is the second part I'm not really happy about. On one charge you can shoot 370 pictures, and if you use the 35mm lens 1.4, then up to 440. I suppose it uses the autofocus differently, I'm not sure, I don't know why, but it uses less battery. I think this is really little, you know. I think all camera maker, I don't speak about Fujifilm especially, but everyone, if they make mirrorless, you should not get less than 500 pictures on a charge. I think this is really shameful. This is not serious, honestly. And that kind of prices, the batteries are not cheap. Even, well, maybe you buy clone battery, but I think they need to really work on that. If you use, if you're actually recording video in 4K, the battery will last for 60 minutes, and if you use Full HD, 75 minutes. Now let's speak about the autofocus. I'm not getting into everything, every detail of the autofocus, how it works. I had several profiles. All this is really good. Why? Because I explained it in the XT3 and the XT30. It's exactly the same thing. It works really, really well. There are two things I really like about this autofocus. First, it's faster than the XT3. That was already really good. I think it's faster. And you have two things that are to stand out. One is, you already know it probably, is the face and eye detection. It works really well in pictures and in video. Nothing to complain about. It's really good. But then there's another feature I think is great, brilliant. You can actually decide where the range of your autofocus. Let's say I'm doing a concert photography and the scene is at and the band playing is at 10 meters. So for security I will place 8 meters and then 15 meters. So it means my autofocus is going to search to focus only between 8 and 15 meters, not before and not after. So what's the point? Well, let's say I'm doing this concert photography, and then there's a guy in front of me 2 meters away that pulls his telephone out and to record something. My camera won't even see it. Well, it will see it, but it will not try to focus on this screen. And very often this is what happens. Someone is crossing the scene, and then your autofocus jumps on this. In this case, no, because it will focus only on the stage, which is where the guys are. It's from 10, or I might replace it on 8 up to 15, and I'm safe. And if you do street photography and you don't want to work with hyperfocal and you do want to use autofocus, that's also great. You say, I place it from 2 meters to 5 meters, and it will focus only on person moving in this range. And I think it's also make the autofocus faster. Because normally an autofocus will search from the minimum focus up to infinity. And very often it's searching in areas where there's nothing you actually want. It's just lost in there, especially when you have low light. In this case, it will search only where you want it to search. So I think this is a really good feature. You can also do multiple exposure. I know many people say, why do you want that? You can do that on Photoshop with no problem. Yes, but if you don't want to use Photoshop, or you don't know how to do it, or you don't want to use a computer, you can actually do multi-exposure up to 9 pictures, so they all get on the same picture, on the same frame. Okay, so that's good. So what is this? Who is this camera for? Is it a good camera? Yes, it is a brilliant camera. Eric, why didn't you like the X-Pro2 and you do like the X-Pro3? Well, first because I think I'm more mature about this concept of camera. And I think Fujifilm has worked on his camera also. I think the X-Pro2 was a good camera, but they missed the last step to make it a cult, a special, a unique camera. They missed it. On this one they made it. And removing the screen is a big part of that. Because now you're not thinking about the camera. You think about the photo. You're thinking, you feel, and you search for your picture, you go and make a picture. You forget about the camera. And when you make a picture, you don't think about the picture you've just made. You're thinking about the next picture. What will be my next picture? And this is a philosophy of photography that I really like. Actually, this is what I do when I go around with my M Leica, my M4P. I actually go around and I'm not thinking about the picture I've made because it's too late. I can't even see it until I develop the roll, you know. So I think that this is the way they've worked. Would I recommend this camera for everyone, to anyone? No. Why? Because I think this camera is limited. It's limited in the way of using it. This is a camera that is really thought for street photography, probably landscape, reportage, maybe weddings also, you know, but not really. If I want to use it on everyday basis for any kind of work like macro photography, doesn't make much sense, because I'm going to use a macro lens, and because of the parallax error, I won't be use the optical viewfinder. I will probably use the digital viewfinder, so I'm paying for something I don't use. Or I'm really need for what I do to check often the screen because I'm not confident in what I do or whatever. I need the screen. It's not my case, but many people need the screen, so they won't like to have it down all the time or moving all the time. Prefer to have a screen full time, so that's not for them, okay? But for people who the typical street photographer, this is a great camera. And I tell you something why it is better than an X-T3, for example, for that. Because an X-T3 or any reflex or mirrorless camera with a viewfinder placed in the center. When I look here, I don't see anything. I've got the camera in front of it if I'm using the viewfinder here. But with this, I see the whole scene. So right now I'm looking and I see a guy, a motorbike coming passing by, and say, oh, that would be good in the picture. So I reframe, you know. If you're using a reflex camera or reflex kind viewfinder, what happens is that you actually see the scene, you decide the framing, and then you place, and that's it. And if something happens here, you're not even aware of this. Unless you use your left eye instead of the right eye, you actually see the scene at any time. So this is really the philosophy of rangefinder photography. So what camera would I compare this camera to? I would compare to the Olympus Pen F, which is not made anymore, and with the Leica M. So the Pen F has a big good point in favor. It's stabilized, so I think it's a pity this is not stabilized. And it's micro four thirds, so some people will not like micro four thirds, but I'm not getting into this or whatever. And then the other option is Leica M. It's a lot of money, and not everyone can afford that or want to spend that money even if they can afford it. So I think this is really the nice beast for that kind of people who want that kind of camera, because it offers many things. And also I think many people used to do film photography and they have lenses like M lenses, M mounts, that can be Leica, Volander, or Skull Zeiss, or some other made also, but or the brand also, but they want to use them. And honestly, unless you have the latest Leica M lens, they will work perfectly on M Leica digital body. They work perfectly. But if you use older M lenses, that's not true. Even some people do say it's true. But I had an M8. I can tell you that older M lenses didn't work properly, and this is actually why Leica made new their lenses also, because the way ray of light travel is different on digital than on film. I mean, the way light travel always the same way, but the way it needs to hit the sensor is different than film. So they had to make it new. So if you have older older Leica lenses or M lenses, they will work a lot better on a sensor that is APS-C than on a full frame body. Why? Because with this APS-C, you will use only the best part of your lens, not the borders. So if you have some older lenses, M-mount lenses, I recommend you get this or a new Leica, but they won't even work properly. So really, this is really probably the best option if you have that kind of lenses. I think this is a cult camera. We'll speak about it in many years still, I'm sure. Actually, Fujifilm was not going to make the X-Pro2, this one. They said, we thought the XproO2 was the last one, and that's it. They would not continue that kind of camera. And they made the XproO3. Why? Because I think they've spoken to their clients who were using XproO2, and they probably asked them, what would you like to have in your new version of this camera? And they probably said, we don't want any screen because we don't need it. And this is why they probably removed the screen. And they probably said, we want maybe a better way to work the viewfinder. I think it's been better than on the XproO2. And they probably said, we want this autofocus to limit range. So I think they've listened to their clients and they've issued a great camera. For the thing I do for me, when I use my M Leica, it's a film Leica, I would probably, yes. If I want to do the same sensation using a digital camera, this is probably the one I would buy more than a digital M. I guarantee I had the digital M, I don't want anymore, okay? So for several reasons, but one of them is the price is crazy. I think you will get a great quality on this, the same feeling, the same sensation. I think this is probably a wonderful camera for these people who look for that kind of use of the camera. So for these people, I recommend it completely. And if you can afford to have several bodies, I would definitely have that kind of camera as a second camera for my pleasure. Because when you use that camera, you actually feel pleasure. You're not just doing work. You really enjoy the camera, enjoy using it. And I think this is probably why then to these people I will recommend this camera. Well, that's it. I hope you like this video. If you think it may interest other people, please share it on social networks. I want to thank Photosura for lending me the camera. They're really nice because I didn't speak too good about the XproO2 and they were a bit worried about what I would say about the XproO3, but they said, no, tell what you want anyway, so here it is. Please, if you have not done yet, subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's a small button down here and also a small bell. If you click on the bell, you get notified when I upload a new video. My website, ericgibaud.com. If you have any question, you can leave a comment below. Send me an email to info@ericgibaud.com. Below, I also leave links of my gear on Amazon, also links to other parts of my YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Bye.